Hey guys, Pheonix here. Today we are going to be going over what exactly. So, circuits are the coding language of Requiem. There are two types of circuits. So there's Cv1, that looks like this, kind of bulky, kind of unclear what it does, just a little picture on it. And this is Cv2, which is circuits version 2. And as you can see, it says what it does. It says if, and it has a true or false put. So there are a few differences between these. Cv2 is the newer version, and you can do more with it, but there are a few unique things that you can do with Cv1 that you can't do with Cv2. This includes the animation gizmo, which allows you to animate objects. There is kind of a Cv2 version of it, which is called the piston, but all that does is just move things in a straight line. And also, the other thing that you can do with Cv1 is you can interfere with the game that is running in your room. So there's the game state chip, which tells you the game, if the game starts, if the game is stopped, and if the game is like about to start. And then you also have the set game state chip, which allows you to start in the game pretty easily. And there is no Cv2 version for this. Now, there is a bunch of other things that you can do with Cv2 that you can't do with Cv1. I'm not going to get into all that because there's a lot of things. One of these includes Word UI, which basically can put a text above your name tag. And this is what Word UI looks like. It adds a text above your name tag, and this can be very useful if you play certain Rec Room games. A lot of games will have this system. If y'all want me to go over this in a later tutorial, I can. Alright, so let me show you what it looks like from my perspective, and what the difference is between coding Cv1 and coding Cv2. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you a quick little look about how the difference is when it looks like when you're coding. So let's use a respawn chip and a player event chip for Cv1 examples. Alright, so let's also put in some buttons in here. An equals chip, delay, and an SFX. Alright, so I'm gonna come around and show you how Cv1 is gonna look. So Cv1 is kind of confusing. So you see these out signals. Currently all of these are at 0. They will change, right? So 0, 0, 0. But if I press it, it changes to 1. And while button is pressed, which means if I'm holding it, it's on 1. And then when released, it sets to 1. So how Cv1 works is it'll set out a signal based on a number, I think anywhere between -500 to 500. But most things will interact with just 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. And then there's the player event chip, which are different types of outputs. So player joined, so this would change to 1 and then go back to 0 to just send the signal when a player joins. Player left, same thing. When a player leaves, it'll go to 1 and then go back to 0 just to send the signal. Number of players, see, this is different. This shows you how many players are in the game and how many is the number that you will get. And this is another one. It'll go to 1 and then go back to 0 when a player switches teams. Okay, so for this we're going to use an SFX chip. So we're going to use an SFX chip right here. So when the signal is 1, it will play a sound.
Blue team scores.
Okay, so if the thing is anything higher than 1, then it should send a signal. So
Blue team scores.
if we wire 1 to 0, it'll play the sound. If we wire 0 to 0, nothing will happen.
Blue team scores.
But now that it's 1, it'll play sound. So, Cv1 is kind of basic, but there is another thing that you can do with a button if we go into the configure menu. So there's this option right here that sends player out as a signal output. So if we do that, then if we get a Cv1 respawn point, so now it will interact with Cv1s. So when button is pressed, see, now that we have the button to send out as a player signal output, it will respawn people. So moving on to Cv2, we are just going to cover the basics. We're not going to go into advanced stuff yet. So here are a few of our important ports. There's exec, which exec sends signals, player, and that's just the player that is interacting. There is bool, which is just true or false. So how that would interact with an if chip is, if it's true, it'll trigger the then. If it's false, it'll trigger the else. So this is a delay chip. So floats, they are just any number, right? So you can do 0, you can do 1, you can do 2, you can do 3, but that's also an int. Where a float differs from an int is you can also go 3.5, 3.7, 3.06. See, there is just a lot more freedom that you can do with a float. So let me guys show you an int for reference. So int is short for integer, and it can only be a whole number. So -1, 1, 2, 3. See, I can't, if I try to make it 5.2, it won't let me. It'll actually change it to 52. You can't make a decimal. So what we're gonna make here is, when I press it, if the person that pressed is Pheonix Heat, which it is, then we are going to so we're gonna do if. So if this is true, then we're going to start the delay. After the delay of 3.06 seconds, it'll play the sound.
Blue team scores.
So there is a lot more Cv2 that I can, and I will hopefully plan to cover. But for now, that is all, because we are just reviewing what circuits are. So on both Cv1 and Cv2 are going to be important to making your game. Cv2 you will probably use more, but again, there is times where you will need to use Cv1, like when you need to animate something or start a game. There's also a few other things that I didn't quite go over that is easier to do with Cv1 than it is with Cv2. We can cover that later if you want, but that's all for now.